Good afternoon, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming. I'm gonna start in just a second here, but before that, I would like to know where you guys are coming from for sure. Please leave it in the comment section or the chat where you located. And I also want to congratulate you on coming here and spending a few times here with me because I've learned throughout my years in the industry that not only do I need to learn the technical side of doing art and being a good artist, but also investing on learning other skills outside of art. And those skills will support my career as an artist, and I think that's what you're doing right now, right? So I think time management is a very special, important skill that we all artists need to have. And so I want to commend you for that and trying to learn a little bit more about it. So thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate your time that you're spending here with me. Um, Before we really dive into all the things, I want to give you a little bit of a backstory real quick. Through the years, I've been able to work with numerous amounts of clients, some short term, some long term. And thinking back, sometimes it was a lot to juggle at the same time. And sometimes there will be times where I had a full time job where I was spending 8, 10 hours for that full time, but I had maybe working with two other clients outside of that, plus sometimes doing my own thing on the side. And sometimes it was, a bit overwhelming, but, I went through it and I still do without any type of major burnout or taking a very long break of art or anything like that. And I think part of it that I was able to mostly do all of that was because of time management and organizing my schedule. And so I started my career, my first official freelance gig was in 2012 when I was doing card illustrations. And at the beginning, my first jobs were about $100, $200 per illustration, which is really not that much. But I was starting out, so I was really just trying to take as much as I can, and that sort of ignited the first thoughts about working faster in order to get more jobs and get paid more per hour. And so uh, after during that time, every time I tried, every time I got a client like that, I tried to get as many as I could based on that, of course, on the deadline and the schedule of the project. But sometimes, I had a month, sometimes I had a month and a half, or etc. But since I was starting out, I was just taking any job that pretty much wouldn't be less than $50. Anything above 50, I will consider it, right? And during that time, we're able, me and my wife, we were able to live with very little expenses. We have a very, very, very simple life back then, and I think back then probably I needed like $1,500 to $1,000 a month in order to just live, which is really not that much. But this was over 12 years ago, so um, but every time I had an opportunity to work on these projects, I would pick 8, 10, 12 illustrations, as many as they could give me, 200 each. That would be around, 1,600 to $1,000 a month, which was enough for me um, to live at least. And this also evolved into thinking and asking myself, okay, what value per hour this is, right? Because if I have an illustration that would take me 8 hours, at $200 each, that will be about 25 an hour. And so I did the math, and 25 an hour was definitely better than my other jobs, way better, right? So my priority became on getting as many as I could consistently, not only to get just the experience, but also to try to substitute and change my other jobs that were non-art related and transition to be a full time doing art. And so that's sort of like the very first beginnings of me thinking, okay, how can I be more efficient? Because at that time, I didn't think that I could get paid more for illustration because of the experience that I had and the skill. And so it was more about the quantity than the quality. And so the more I could get and fit within my available time, the more I will get per hour, and the more efficient I was, the better, right? But but why? Why care about it? Why spend and invest time, every single day, to be as optimal as possible or as efficient as possible? And I want to share with you three main reasons why you should invest into this, especially as an artist, right? And the first one is because your time is your most valuable asset, right? It's not money, it's not your body, it's not anything else that you could think of, right? It's really your time. Time is the only thing that you can never make more of or duplicate. The hour that you spent last week doing something is gone and will never be back. And most of us, we trade time for another resource, which is money, right? And if there was just one thing that you could take out of this whole presentation, would be this statement here, because everything that we're going to talk about, everything that the reasons that why we do certain things, at its root, it has this as the main reason and the motivation and the why we're doing it. If you don't believe this is true, and if you don't act like this is true, then anything else will really won't matter as much, right? And so this is really the most important thing and the why we do it. Second reason is the more organized you are, the more things you can get done. Now, I cannot tell you the vast difference that I have between the days or weeks that I plan and the days and weeks that I'm not organized and I don't plan ahead, right? So in comparison, I can definitely I for sure do a lot more those weeks or days that I plan ahead and I schedule it and I organize it than when I don't. So we're gonna talk a little bit about more about the how later, but I can simply get more done when I'm organized. And number three, because you deserve it. Now we go back to the first reason, right? Time is your most valuable asset, right? And how we spend our time is one of the very few things we can actually control in this life. And so I think we owe it to ourselves to figure out the best way we spend our most valuable asset. So we have to take control. Okay, so how do we do this? How can we take control over time and schedule and optimize it as much as possible? Right, I'm gonna give you 3 tools or processes today for this that I currently normally use, and these are things that I do daily, right, and that have worked for me throughout the years. And I want to use the letter E's to try to convey this. And the first E is going to be evaluate or identify. Now, this means that we have to determine what our non-negotiables or pillars for your life are, right? So what does this mean? We all have things in our life that are non-negotiable. It will, of course, vary per person, but these things are, a necessity for us as a person and who we are, right? And so mine looks a little bit like this. I have my regular work, which is my anything that has to deal with work, full time, my side jobs, um, mentorship, anything that I do for work. I have my family, so I'm a husband, I have a wife, and so that's part of my immediate family. I have 3 dogs as well, and so this is part of my core pillars. Church, which is anything that I do for my spiritual journey in life and how I feed that. My personal growth is anything that I decide to do that will make me better in anything that I want to. So, better as an artist, better as a family person, as whatever that case may be, anything that has to do with personal growth. And soul feeding is the things that I do that really feed my soul and I really, really enjoy doing outside of art, and that make me who I am, right? So in my case, I love riding horses, I love going to the gym, doing jiu-jitsu, all playing basketball, all these things that um, feed my soul and make me pretty much happy and content, and uh, that I just enjoy doing, right? And so these are my 5 pillars right now. Some people may have 3, some people may have 6, some people may have just 2 or 1. The more you have, the more difficult it gets. I think most people can bring these down to 3 to 5, and the less that you have, the more control that you have. And when you determine this, right, if you go through this exercise, these are based on your priorities, right? These are based on your goals. These are based on what you want to accomplish and who you want to be in the future. And so you take over your time that you're awake, right? And fill it with these non-negotiables, just like a zero-sum budget. And you want to plan ahead your available time to fill all these needs. Now, what's a zero-sum budget? I don't want to bore you with finances, but when you want to take, when somebody wants to take control of their money and their income, you have to do a budget, right? And a zero sum budget means that you allocate every single penny that you earn and you give it a purpose. You give it a job and you give it a task. And you want to know how each of your earning dollar is being spent, because after all, you're using your most valuable asset, which is your time, in order to earn that money. Well, we have to do the same thing with our time, right? Which is probably the only asset that we have that's more valuable than money. And so when you do a budget, you want to make sure that every single dollar to the zero to the cent, you know exactly how it's spent. And so sometimes these things shift, right? A little bit depending on the situation. This is, for example, crunch time, right? So this is me working. If I'm working my full-time job, maybe I have a freelance on the side, or I'm recording videos for mentorship, or working on some side thing that I'm trying to build, or whatever the case, right? So I have to sacrifice a little bit of those other pillars temporarily, right, in order for me to build that thing that I'm trying to do. And so sometimes it's the other way around, right? Or maybe I'm on vacation, I'm spending more time with the family, or doing things I just simply love doing, right? And why do I concentrate on these five things, right? I realize that most things outside of these five things in my life, to me, don't matter as much, right? So it is okay if I don't end up doing them, and I can live and still be me if I don't do them, right? So for example, it's okay if I don't end up playing the latest Assassin's Creed game when it comes out, right? I can wait a year to play it if I'm on crunch time. Or it is okay if I don't go out with my friends on a weekend for a whole year, because I'm really trying to build my portfolio, break into the industry, and weekends is really the only available time that I have. And so we have to be able to identify what these core things are in our lives, and we have to regain control and be aware how we are spending our time. And so evaluate what those core things are that are non-negotiable based on your priorities and goals. And from that, we'll go to the next step, which is going to be engineer or plan, right? So schedule, schedule, schedule. We have to come up with a plan. We have to come up with a schedule. Now, I've tried many different forms of, and with time, I've learned what works for me best, and I try to keep improving as I feel the needs. But right now, I mostly do weekly schedules and daily. And the reason is because things often change very quickly. And so it could be the middle of the week, right? And a new client pops up on a Wednesday needing something for that Friday. And so I have to be able to have that flexibility for me to move things around if needed. And I can only do that if I'm organized and have a schedule. Now, I could choose not to work with that client. Of course, you can always do that, but I'd rather not, right? And so I learned not to plan so far ahead and so detailed too far ahead, because things could change very quickly. They don't always do, but I want to be prepared about it. Now, this is normally a typical day for me, right? And how I break it up, based on my current daily needs that I need to do. And sometimes I switch things up a little bit if they're not working out, if things change. But normally I have, in the middle here, I have my main job. This is non-negotiable. This is always there. This is most likely never going to change unless I'm on vacation or I have the day off or whatever. But I want to concentrate on these two ends of this bar here. And, I want to fit, I normally fit my gym or jiu-jitsu or whatever physical exercise I'm doing that day, as soon as I wake up. And from the moment that I get home before I clock out, then I try to fit in or anything that has to do with my extra personal growth. Of course, eating isn't there. Um, any early work that I want to get done or design work that I want to get done early that day, I fit it in there. And then I clock in, I do my regular job, and then once I clock out, I have the same thing where I have this block of time where I can feed some family time, of course, dinner, anything side work, freelance, side hustle that I'm trying to do, or anything that I'm trying to build, I fit it into that time. But if I look at it like this, I have these two chunks of time that I have mostly available and free to do, almost whatever I want to be and fit those pillars in here. But I don't want to look at it like this, where I have 4 to 5 hours here, 5 to 6 hours here. I want to break it up even further, because I still want to try to break things down into bite-sized pieces. And the reason for that is that if I think that I have 4 to 5 hours to work on something, that gives me the illusion that I have plenty of time to work on it. And that leaves more room for me to get distracted and doing other things that I shouldn't be doing, and waste, valuable time. And so I'll give you an example here where I'm working on this project, right? And I'm recording videos, recording all the processes, building all, doing this whole world building course for this project for the mentorship. And I'm at a stage where I'm I'm creating a sort of like a small 3D kit based on these concepts that I created, in order for me to continue the project. And I know I have to model a couple of trains and props and buildings and textures and call outs and the alien surface and all that. And so I know I have to do all those things, but I'm not thinking about modeling all this stuff, right? I'm not thinking about the bigger picture when I look at this whole world. I try to take it and break it down into achievable task, right? And I'm gonna take one step at a time, and I'm going to schedule all my tasks on my calendar, weekly or daily, like I mentioned. So let's say that I start with modeling trains, right? All I'm gonna do is just modeling for now, and I need some variations. I know I need some textures and decals and details and all that. But I'm starting with just one, right? And I'll go even a step further, where I take that one task and I'll break. Let's say the task is a train. I'll break this train into parts that will allow me to make them and make progress with 2 hours of work per session. And so when I break it up, I'll make a list of all these things that I'm gonna need, right? So in this case, I want to create 2 variations of the front of the train, 2 variations of the back, a couple of variations of the body, some roof props, train tracks, props, etc. And having a visual list like this helps me have a better idea of what I need to do in order for me to gauge the time it would take me to do each individual task, right? And so I sort of also broke it up into a visual, just screenshotting different parts, right? So all these are different tasks of things that I need to make. And so when I go to my schedule, I set it up like this, where on Monday it could look something like this, where I spend that first block here, right? Because maybe I go to the gym, I do all my exercise, and then I have 2, maybe 3 hours here. And then I say, okay, I'm gonna spend just those hours just modeling that one variation of the front of the train, right? And then in the afternoon, I do my rest of the day, and then at the other block, I fit in another block, which is another 2 to 3 hours, right? But the trick for this is that I'm really relying on compounding the work, right? I'm not thinking about, oh, I gotta make this whole train and I gotta do the textures and all that. I'm like, no, I gotta think about, okay, I just need to make today, I just gotta make one variation or 2 variations of the front of the train, just a model, right? And I know if I do that every single day, I'm compounding that work, that by the end of the week, I have a lot done. And so maybe on Tuesday, I do something like this, where I create a couple panels, some windows, some mechanical doors and stuff like that. And maybe on Wednesday, I create some props and maybe some more parts for the body of the train. So again, I'm relying on the fact that little wins throughout the week amount to something big and progress by the end of the week, right? And so by the end of the week, I have all the pieces that I need in order for me to move on to the next stage. Now, in this case, you know, I want to concentrate and celebrate that I have progress, right? So I started with 0 at the beginning of the week. I end up with something by the end of the week, and I can move on to the next stage if I plan it right. And which in this case, it will be texturings, and I will do exactly the same thing where I plan it and schedule it and break it up into things. But it is important for me to understand that the compounding work amounts to the end of the week. And so this is how I can best schedule and plan my tasks throughout the week. Now, is it always perfect? No. Do I stick with it 100% all the time? No, of course not. But the important thing is that I have a plan, I create a plan, and I have a goal and direction that is 100 times better than trying to wing it and work on something without actually planning for it. And so I want to give you a couple of few tips on this particular part, right? The first one is you have to be realistic about your task, right? I cannot expect that I will have a whole terrain model and texture and with decals and details in a week, because the available time that I have normally is simply not enough. And so it is better to over deliver on a task every single day than to fall short on your task. It will help you feel like you're accomplishing little wins throughout the week, which keeps you sort of motivated because you see progress and trying to push through a impossible task, and you get frustrated and then you see yourself quitting before you actually see it through. Second one will be write it down, right? So think about it and have it visible. I personally have this is a photo of my weekly uh, planner where I write down my task for that week. And so it's easy for me to look at it if at any point during the week I feel like lost, or I feel unsure about what to do next, or I'm not sure where I'm at. This is sort of like my guide. And I try to prepare this beforehand, usually on Sundays or very early in the month on Mondays. And so I have this right next to my computer where I can always look at it and sort of help me guide my day with the things that I need to get done that day or that week. And third, commit. This is the big one, right? You have to believe in the process. You have to believe in the little wins. You have to believe on planning ahead so you can actually commit. And so if there's no commitment, you will wander around and you will end up not finishing anything and become overwhelmed by the amount of work due because you didn't break it down and you didn't see it as bite-sized pieces that you can actually accomplish one at a time every single day. And so lastly, I want to finish with this, right? The last E is for explore. Now, this only means that every moment that I can, I'm finding ways to save time and be more efficient. Now, let me be clear, this is how I best operate and how I am okay with doing art and my job, right? I personally don't take pride in how long something takes me. I rather take pride in that I get something done. And so sometimes, let's say for example, you have an artist that might be too much of a perfectionist and will spend 100 hours for an illustration that pays $1,000. Now you might think that $1,000 is good money for an illustration, which is not bad, but it's taking you 100 hours, and so that will be 10 hours, $10 an hour for that job. And so you have to be aware about if you can be more efficient in certain areas, that you can cut the time so you can actually regain your most valuable asset, which is your time, right? And so here's a quick example of how I something that I've done in order to save time. Now this is one out of many different processes, but this is just to give you a quick example here. And so let's say for example that in Blender, I found myself doing this whole cube atmospheric fog thing effect on all my scenes just to try it out at least. Something that I do normally for just trying to see how it looks in my scene. And so the process for anybody that doesn't know, you bring a cube and you attach a volumetric and you play with the values and the color and you see how much fog you want and all that. And it usually takes about 5 minutes to set up and just to kind of explore if it's going to work or not, or at least to me. And I almost try it on every single scene that I make that has any type of lighting or mood into the scene, right? And well, instead of doing this process, which took me just a couple minutes every single time, what I did was I did it one, and I saved it as an asset in Blender. And now I just simply click here and drag it into my scene, and it's already there. And so that saves me a couple minutes every single time that I do it. Now, that may not be a lot of saving as a one-time event, but you have to think about this, compound this one single saving with 20 other more processes that you have figured out a way to save time. That compounds and compounds, and in the long run, you actually save a lot of time. And so finding ways to save, even if it's just like 1 minute of your pipeline, could lead to major savings in the long run. And so this is just like one simple way that I normally do it. And there's many, many, many different ways, but um, it's very important that you think about, you don't overestimate or underestimate the amount of time that you're actually saving. Now let's do a quick little recap here. Again, the 3 E's: evaluate, define those non-negotiables that are important for you and your goals. Again, you have to base this on your priorities. And the less that you have, the better. Engineer, plan ahead, and create a schedule based on achievable tasks. Remember to break things down into bite-sized pieces so you can actually fit them in your day-to-day and you actually make progress throughout the week. Explore, find creative ways to become more efficient. Now, this is going to be a long run, very marathon like process. It's just something you're not going to figure out today. These two you can start today, but this is going to be, I still do this and I still try to find ways. So this is going to be a ongoing thing that you have to do. And lastly, remember that your time is your most valuable asset. So let's not waste it. Let's regain control of it and let's do great things. Thank you.